Have you ever been, diving into a new subject, maybe a technical paper or a new fitness routine, and you hit a part that just makes you stop cold?
Oh, for sure. That moment of intellectual whiplash.
Yeah.
It's when you read something that is so completely contradictory to everything you thought you knew that your brain's immediate firewall just goes straight up.
Exactly. Our default reaction, it's almost primal to information that doesn't fit our existing maps, our
Mm.
manuals, is just rejection.
Simple rejection.
We hear it and we immediately think, that can't be right, or this person must be delusional, because if we accept it, we have to admit our entire framework might be, well, flawed.
And it's human nature, right, to protect the knowledge we've invested so much time in. But that instinct, I mean, that's the enemy of innovation. When we find an idea that is that radically unfamiliar, we have to understand that innovation in its purest form, it often sounds like heresy. It just sounds wrong, dangerous even.
And that is precisely the mission for our deep dive today. We are exploring a case study where challenging generations of tradition didn't just lead to success. It led to an unmatched, verifiable truth.
And we need to dissect this resistance, to understand how you can approach new information, especially the stuff that makes you deeply uncomfortable at first.
Because if you really want to grow, whether it's in sports or a technical field, you can't afford to just reflexively reject that strange new idea.
No, you have to be willing to pause, to really pause and ask, what is this person truly saying? And, what if the truth has been buried for decades under tradition and, frankly, institutional ego?
To bring this all to life, we're diving deep into professional golf instruction and the story of one of the most polarizing figures the sport has ever seen, Jimmy Ballard.
Ballard is. I mean, he is the definition of a necessary heretic. He walked into a world defined by this rigid, stylized instruction and offered something based purely on human physiology and results.
When you read the sources on him, the hostility he faced was, well, it was visceral. He wasn't just criticized. He was labeled as dangerous, controversial, professionally wrong.
And the resistance wasn't subtle. It was institutional. We're talking about the PGA of America, the gatekeepers of the game, actively trying to erase him.
Erase him from the conversation, from the manuals, from any kind of legitimacy.
Yeah, and think about that for a second. Think about the level of threat an individual has to pose for a major professional body to try and delegitimize him completely.
It wasn't just an intellectual disagreement.
No, it's an existential threat to thousands of instructors who had built their entire careers on the old, established systems. Ballard's methods, if they were true.
Well, it meant that a lot of very powerful people had been wrong for a very long time.
And that right there is the central tension here. Because while the establishment was trying to lock him out, his students were doing something no one could ignore.
They were winning.
Big time. The results were his shield and his hammer. They just rendered all the political arguments against him completely meaningless.
And here is the single staggering achievement that validates everything. An achievement that is still unmatched in golf history.
It's incredible.
In 1 year, 1988, 4 major championships were won by 4 different students, all using the Jimmy Ballard system.
That's the ultimate proof of concept. I mean, one major victory, that could be a fluke, a hot streak, luck.
Yeah.
But 4 separate players taking home 4 of the sport's biggest prizes.
The Masters, the U.S. Open, the Open Championship.
All of them. All trained under this supposedly dangerous philosophy. I mean, that is statistically impossible to just dismiss.
These weren't flukes. These were products of a system grounded in anatomical truth, not just some century-old tradition. The names.
Will resonate.
Curtis Strange, winning the U.S. Open.
Sandy Lyle at the Masters.
And the legend, Seve Ballesteros, winning the Open.
Yeah.
These guys were at their absolute peak, proving his concepts worked under the highest pressure imaginable.
So we have to shift from the result to the process. If his system produced that kind of incredible success, we need to understand exactly what he was teaching that made the entire golf world just recoil.
What was the heresy?
Yeah.
Let's dig into it. Most golf instruction, it was all about creating this perfect, repeatable, almost theoretical swing, hitting certain checkpoints and angles.
Right, like a machine.
So what did Ballard teach that was so revolutionary?
Well, he basically tossed that checkpoint manual out the window. What Ballard taught was fundamentally athletic motion.
Athletic motion.
He treated the golfer not as some mechanism hitting static poses, but as a fluid, kinetic athlete trying to move a weight the club efficiently. His entire philosophy was rooted in anatomy. in connection.
That sounds so simple, but it flies in the face of what so many of us were taught, which was, stabilize everything, restrict movement, keep your head perfectly still.
Precisely. He was asking them to embrace motion. And that created this huge psychological hurdle for his students. Because Ballard's core insight, and this is critical for any learner, was that feel isn't always real.
Okay, explain that concept. Break that down for us, because that seems like the key barrier for anyone trying to adopt a new approach to anything.
Okay, think about it like this. If you're trying to change a deeply ingrained habit, your golf swing, how you type, anything, the first time you do it correctly, it feels profoundly wrong.
It feels alien.
It feels wrong because your internal sense of coordination, your feel, is calibrated to the old, inefficient movement.
So you might feel like you're swaying all over the place just because your body is used to being rigid. But in reality, you're just moving the few inches you need to properly load the swing.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
It's like trying to fix your posture just based on what it feels like. You might think you're standing up straight, but the objective evidence, the mirror, the video shows you're leaning forward. Ballard forced golfers to abandon that unreliable internal feel and replace it with objective, anatomically correct reality.
And that cognitive dissonance is what made the traditionalists so incredibly uncomfortable.
It's everything.
So let's get into the specific mechanics. The things that truly flew in the face of conventional instruction. He wasn't just pulling these ideas out of thin air.
No, he was pulling them from a completely different sport. He did something that was, for the time, just shocking. He brought ideas directly from baseball.
From baseball into the world of traditional golf.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can imagine the reaction. Golf instruction saw itself as this unique, elegant discipline. Ballard just came in and said, look, a powerful rotational swing is a powerful rotational swing, whether you're swinging a bat or a club.
That must have been professional sacrilege. What were the specific mechanics he brought over?
The big ones that caused all the fury were two main things. First, he taught controlled lateral movement. And second, he emphasized loading into the trail side.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there. Because the conventional wisdom for decades has been keep your head still, don't sway.
The cardinals.
Right. Moving laterally was drilled into every amateur as the road to disaster. Why wasn't Ballard afraid of it?
Because the fear of lateral movement led to this excessive rigidity. Traditionalists wanted the golfer to rotate on a fixed axis, like a Ferris wheel. Ballard said the body just doesn't generate power that way.
So what's a better analogy?
Think of a pitcher or a big tennis serve. There's always that controlled lateral shift of weight before the explosion of movement. His lateral move was about shifting the center of mass to prime the body. It wasn't just sliding away from the ball.
And that shift primes the body for the next step, which was the power generation from loading the trail side. What did that look like?
Well, conventional wisdom said keep the weight centered, maybe even favoring the lead side. Maintain that fixed axis at all costs. Ballard taught golfers to actively load into their trail side, to transfer their mass over the back foot.
Creating tension.
Exactly. It's maximizing the stretch in the big muscles of your torso and hips. You're pulling back a slingshot, you have to load it to fire it.
Okay, so if you load the slingshot on that trail side, how do you release the energy? Which I guess leads to his final critical concept, firing from the ground up.
This is where it all comes together. The anatomy meeting the power. Most golfers, following that old instruction, they start the downswing with their shoulders, or their arms, their hands, of small muscles. It's a massive power lead.
Right.
Ballard insisted the entire sequence had to start with the lower body, from the ground.
Can you give us an analogy for what ground up feels like versus the old way?
For sure. Imagine you're trying to punch a heavy bag. If you only use your arm and shoulder, that's the old upper body focused golf swing. It's weak.
Okay.
But if you want that knockout punch, you rotate your hips first. You drive off your back foot. The energy travels from the ground up through your legs, through your core, and finally out through your fist. That kinetic sequence, legs, hips, core, shoulders, arms, that is Ballard's ground up approach.
So this whole dynamic, athletic approach, the lateral move, the heavy trail side load, firing from the ground, it was seen as reckless because it meant admitting rigidity was a flaw, not a feature.
And that institutional resistance, that urge to dismiss the new, that is the real lesson here for all of us. Ballard was threatening the gatekeepers, not because he was bad, but because he was right, verifiably right, and successful.
The PGA manuals, the proprietary knowledge, All of it was suddenly rendered suboptimal by a guy who just understood human movement better.
Right.
So if we step away from the driving range for a minute and look at the bigger picture, this is where we connect Ballard's story directly to you, the learner. If you want to grow rapidly, whether you're prepping for a technical meeting or adopting a new coding language, you have to adopt this Ballard mindset.
You have to be willing to listen to that counterintuitive idea, the strange one that clashes with the framework you've so comfortably built. You just can't let your own intellectual rigidity become your power leak.
We are so conditioned to seek out confirmation bias information that just reinforces what we already think. Ballard's story teaches us that truth is often buried under tradition and ego and what economists call the sunk cost fallacy.
That's a huge one. The idea that people don't want to admit they spent 20 years teaching or relying on something that was, well, suboptimal.
So what's the actionable mindset here? When you encounter a radically different idea, it's not about rejecting tradition just for the sake of it.
No, it's simply about pausing before you reject the new idea.
Yeah.
You have to lean into the contradiction, not turn away from it.
So how do we actually do that? How do we operationalize that lean-in strategy? I think the process is actually pretty simple, and it comes straight from Ballard's results.
Right. First, you have to ask why. Don't just stop at, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
You have to understand the underlying principles, the anatomical truth, the mechanical necessity that the radical idea is based on.
Ballard didn't just tell them to do it. He explained the science behind it.
Exactly. Then second, you have to test it. Apply the idea in a controlled, measured way. If you're a programmer, write a small piece of code using the unconventional method. Test it on a low-stakes project first.
His students tested it on the range, not just during the masters.
For sure. And finally, you have to measure it. Ballard's students measured success in championships. For your learning journey, you measure it by efficiency gains, by demonstrable improvement. If the counterintuitive idea actually improves your performance, then the feel doesn't matter anymore. The old tradition becomes irrelevant.
Just like Ballard's system, that unfamiliar idea, the one that sounded reckless and wrong at first, it might not only be true, it might fundamentally change your game, your entire process, in ways you never imagined.
It all starts with that willingness to listen to the heretic, to give their challenge a fair test. We've seen that sometimes the person with the unmatched verifiable results is the one the gatekeepers worked hardest to dismiss.
They prove that tradition is just an agreed-upon past. It's not inherently better than a present-day truth.
That willingness to accept the uncomfortable truth, that maybe your way isn't the best way, that's the core takeaway.
So we'll leave you with this idea to chew on after this deep dive.
If being right, when it contradicts the comfortable established majority, makes you dangerous, what rigid common belief are you holding on to right now just because the manual of the culture says so?
No.
What accepted tradition in your field are you afraid to truly challenge, test, and measure against a new reality?
The moment you can identify that friction point.
That's when you might just find the key to unlocking your own version of unmatched success.